Greetings. We're in part 3 of Learn to Walk Before You Learn to Run. Today on major point 3, we want to consider the potential pitfalls. The potential pitfalls. Number 1 is simply a temptation, a trial, or an opportunity to be put to the test. 1 Timothy 6:9 declares, "But they that will," again, that word means desire to be rich, "fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." Now, remember 1 Corinthians 10:13 states that the temptations are common to man, and there is a way to escape every temptation. Of course, being content with the things we have would be good on that number 1 point. The second potential pitfall is called the snare of the devil in 1 Timothy 3:7. Speaking of the qualifications of bishops, which ultimately apply to every believer, "Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil." Listen, if we succumb to the temptation, that is the solicitation to do evil, James 1, you remember, says it's in our nature, and all the devil has to do is incite the lust that's in us, then we've fallen into his trap or his snare. The accuser of the brethren, as he's called, seeks permission night and day to lay snares or obstacles in our path. The third potential pitfall is called the condemnation of the devil. In 1 Timothy 3:6, it says, "Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil." Listen, when Satan cannot condemn us concerning our eternal salvation, he then seeks to condemn us concerning our temporal lives of service. The word accuser, as it's used in Revelation 12:10, does not refer to a legal verdict. Rather, it refers to a public, slanderous, libelous charge which could be totally false. I would be quick to remind you, Jesus was charged with a lot of wrongdoing, though he was not guilty of any. Now, we're not quite that way, but I just want to make the point. Just because he brings the charge doesn't necessarily mean there's anything to substantiate that charge. The fourth potential pitfall is called a reproach. 1 Timothy 3:7, "Lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil." Let me put it all in order. When we fall into temptation, we fall into a snare. We're then accused before God for a condemnation by the devil, and we're open to a reproach. And the word reproach literally means a tongue lashing. And number 5, pitfall is judgment at the hands of God. In Hebrews 10:29, it says, "Of how much sore punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant, wherewith he was sanctified, an unholy thing, and hath done despite under the Spirit of grace? For we know him that hath said, Vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God." Now, I think we should stop and take a little thought here, that the inspired writing is, the writer is speaking to save people. The lost already stand condemned before God. God will pass sentence over those already condemned when they stand before him at the great white throne judgment. This is the ultimate mischief spoken of for the wicked in our text verse of Proverbs 24:16, where it says they'll fall and not rise again. The same concept is presented in Romans chapter 1, where it teaches us as you go through the chapter that God gives the wicked over to perform and to pay for their choices. Jesus asked in Luke 6:39, "Can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch?" The ditch or cistern coincides with the prophesied picture of God treading the winepress in his fury. Therefore, the concept of the saved falling into the hands of the living God for judgment has to do with temporal chastening and not eternal condemnation. And sometimes the doctrine of falling from grace is taught as a confusion of these two facts.